Dave Scott, Hub Media. It's the September show, Purposely Unplugged with Lori. Lori, I haven't seen you this summer. How's your summer been?
Fabulous. Lots of time outside. I've turned into a birder, Dave. My
Oh,
mom was a birder and I never really understood it, and I get it now. I downloaded Merlin on my phone so I can find the birds, know who they are. I can now identify them by sound, show my grandson. I am now a birder.
it's isn't it funny how those things our parents did that we thought were sort of like, "Ooh, oh, what are they doing?" I found that lately too. There's some things that my parents, my mom and my dad used to do that I find myself leaning towards now as I get older. And it kind of scares me a little bit, but I think birding's a good hobby to get into, and it's lots of fun, like you said. Um, what are we talking about this month? It's been a while, so are we catching up, or what's
Yeah.
our subject?
Well, it's September, and I notice with clients always in September that going back to school for families is a big challenge. Going back to school for kids, going off to university, college. I think every September we've talked about this, and I think we should talk about it again. That, September is just one of these times, to just stop, breathe, refocus. There's so much that happens, and it really brings us into the fall season. So, really, this time of just stop, breathe, refocus.
Okay, my first question on this: how the heck do you stop?
Oh,
You're caught up in this whirlwind of stuff. How do you make your body and your mind just stop?
yeah, that's a good question. You often send me some articles, and one of the articles you sent me about 4 months ago was about decision paralysis. That our lives are just so busy. We're constantly flooded with information. Our technology world has constantly been changing. So you're right. How do we stop? I mean, one of the first things is put the phone down.
Yeah.
Like, put the phone down once in a while. And some of us even have panic when we put the phone down. Like, put the phone down, like, just disconnect a little bit. But to stop, there's actually a mnemonic around this. S is stop. T, take a breath. O, observe what's going on around you, observe what's going on in your body. And then P, planfully do something different, purposefully do something different. So there's a mnemonic: stop, stop, take a breath, observe, plan, and purposely do something different. So we might literally have to train ourselves to stop. Literally sit, think of one thing at a time. Purposefully eat. I think too, Dave, we're all eating so quickly. Like, purposefully eat and just stop our bodies, give ourselves a bit of a break.
It's in it's just stopping takes you to that point of breathing. But when I find and a lot of people I think find this as well, when you want to stop, like my outlet would probably be a walk or a run. You know what I mean? Just stop. Just stop what you're doing and walk away for a minute, because in that moment you can't resolve it. If there's a bunch of issues, you just need to stop and again breathe and refocus. But the breathing part too, because I think people get caught up. Like I've we've all did it. You go for a walk and you got 28 things on your mind, and you can't even focus on one. So let's talk a bit about the breathing part of it for a minute.
Absolutely. So I'm actually taking a week of vacation, which I don't think I've done since 2018. So I have a couple books piled up, and one of them is breathing. So, an entire book on breathing. I've started reading it, but I really want to get into it. But honestly, what we're finding is that most of us don't breathe deeply. Our polyvagal systems are so revved up. We've got cortisol and adrenaline like piping through our polyvagal system. It's really just taking a breath and slowing it down. But that's not easy. So ice is the trick, Dave. So an ice cube right at the back of your neck, right where your neck kind of twists and turns, an ice cube. Hold it, hold it. And then when it gets too cold, like when you feel like you want to remove it, take 3 deep breaths. It recalibrates your polyvagal system, and then your breath can really calm down.
Really,
Yeah,
I gotta
we've
try
never
that.
talked about that, eh?
So I will be using a whole bag of ice.
Sure,
But
sure.
that it makes sense now that you explain it. Like I was like, where's she going with this one? Right? This is kind of neat. But yeah, because then all of a sudden you're allowing yourself that time, are you not? Plus, it doesn't hurt to have that little bit of a cold ice just to chill to get things going. Is I agree with you on the deep breath part
Yes.
100%, because I don't think People actually even know how to breathe through their nose anymore. I know that sounds weird, but I mean, to take it in, take that full breath in and then let it out nice and easy. Is it that simple though? Do you think it's like stop, breathe? I mean, those two aspects, I think if you could even get those two down, you're on your way, because then all of a sudden it allows, like you said, the recalibration with just that. The refocus part, do we get caught up? So do we go down rabbit holes? Like, let's say we got a problem and we're like, oh, this could spiral into this, 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 and this, where we need to step back. Maybe when we're refocusing, do we just address one small aspect of that situation that we can control?
Well, that's an interesting way to even ask the question, because control might be at the root of that. That's a whole nother session, Dave.
What do you mean?
So by refocus, there's something I often do with clients, and it's 3 questions. How long have I already thought about it? In the next 5 minutes, am I going to come up with another solution? And what does my body really need? So it's a cognitive approach. I mean, I work from lots of different focus, Dave, but how long have I already thought about it? In the next 5 minutes, can I really come up with another option? And what does my body really need?
I want to throw something in and then see if this fits into this. I had a situation just the other day where a situation arose that I didn't see coming out of the blue. And I got to be honest with you, my first thought was, oh, poop, right? And then my second thought was, oh, this is an opportunity. And I don't think that's really hard to learn to do. It's taken me years to go, oh, wait, I'm looking at this all wrong. This is another way I could take this. But why do we always go to the negative first?
Well, our brains are trained that way. And, we've always been talking about family of origin too. I mean, sometimes we just absorb these things from those around us, whoever they might be. But society also, we just think that way. And it's just our brain does that easier. So that thought is whenever one negative thought comes up, replace it with 3 pieces of gratitude. So that's different. So gratitude really helps us ground. But in all honesty, it's a natural automatic thought. And part of that is just stopping, like you said, and thinking, what are the alternatives? What are the other alternatives? And when you say see an opportunity, you're right. Sometimes our greatest opportunities come out of the biggest misfortunes in our life.
Right.
I teach at Conestoga, and one of the courses I get a wonderful lecture around resilience. And that idea that sometimes out of the worst situations come the greatest opportunity. So resilience is a big part of this too. And you're right, maybe as we get older, we can be more resilient and kind of see that. But maybe it's another life transition that happens for you. Maybe there's a death in the family. Maybe it's the birth of a child. I mean, there's so many situations in life where we get this opportunity to stop and refocus. And I appreciate that you said, see the opportunity, not just the misfortune.
It's interesting too, because I think, and I want to add to this because I think this plays into stop, breathe, refocus, but I think it's a sidebar and we'll probably do another show on it. I know you're going to tell me this, because the peer pressure that people take from their community, from their family, from folks around them, sometimes helps, sometimes does not help make those decisions when you want to stop, breathe, and refocus. And we put that peer pressure on ourselves. When you're into that situation and you want to breathe and you want to stop, or you want to stop, you want to breathe, and you want to refocus, how do you step aside from those issues? Can you?
Well, we can, but I think it's different at everybody's point in their life. Like if I'm working with a younger person, Dave, it's really talking about what are your values? What's important? What really matters? 5 years from now, what's going to really matter? So with younger people, it's really looking at that. Sometimes with someone who's later in life, it's really what has worked in your life? What do you want to build on? What hasn't worked on in your life? And what do you want to shift and change? So, I mean, honestly, that's not an easy answer, but the peer pressure part really is that self-awareness. You looking at yourself, what matters to you, and then creating the conversation that you will have with others to explain why it matters to you.
Right.
So that might be all the way back to where we started about just the therapeutic relationship is just having someone to listen who's outside the situation, where some of these alternatives can be explored. And then ultimately a client decides, well, what's best for them. And that kind of is touching on your question, but peer pressure is a big, big piece. And maybe we do want to show around it. And it's not just peer pressure, there is pressure from everywhere. Pressure in our jobs, pressure in our social lives, pressure in some of the volunteer commitments we have. We have pressures really pushing and forcing and moving us in all kinds of directions. But ultimately, I think what you're asking, I mean, is who am I and what matters to me?
Yeah, I agree 100% because when you're able to step aside from that and go, wait, this is what I need right now. And, the cause and effect is going to be positive for everybody. I just need to get through this moment. That's where I think you become more, your mindfulness and your self-awareness go to another level when you're able to accept that and move through things, in my opinion. But that's why I wanted to ask it, because I think you see a lot of people get stuck. It's like, well, this is what Jim does, I should do it this way. Well, that might not work for you when you want to stop, breathe, and refocus. So, Lori, what do you do for a living? We haven't even touched on that this show. What are you? Who are you? Where are you? How can they get a hold of you? Why do you do it?
I am an independent therapist, and it is a blessing to be at the point in the life where I am. I think I've said a couple times, if I thought 20 years ago that this is where I was going to be, I would not have been able to think of this. So, an independent therapist, work with all kinds of folks, different ages, different scenarios. And really, I'm a very naturalized therapist in that we're going to have quiet conversations about what matters to you. And I'm trained in a model called EMDR. So it means if there's something really traumatic, that we work through it in a way that's different and than other therapists perhaps, and that's okay. But with every client, I explain what the options are, what the client wants to do, and I work from home predominantly. So that is Walsingham, which most people have to Google to find, but that's okay. And the best way to reach me is cell. It's definitely the best way, 226-934-7425.
It's been a great show. And I'm glad we got back together and we're able to do this and have some fun, because it's, as you can see, I had a list of questions today I was just gonna, throw at you to get you going. But I always appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, you're right. I mean, who would have thought 20 years ago you'd be sitting here doing this with me, right? Come on.
Yeah.
I'm glad I was able to fulfill that dream for you.
Yeah. Well, in 20 years ago, who thought you'd be doing this?
Yeah, that's true. That's a really great point. But I think that's another show down the road, because the evolution of change has been so dramatic in the last 20 years for all generations, that we're kind of, at points, we struggle with it, because we get stuck in the same old world, right? And we want that to continue, but it doesn't. We got to move forward.
Well, that's a whole nother show, Dave, because not only is there change, but the world has changed around us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so many people, even the next generation, it's difficult to buy homes and even have the life we had thought might be available to everyone. And so there's lots of pieces around that. Definitely another show.
A small sidebar on all that. I wrote a piece. It was just in the August Hub. It was about AI and life. And one of the things that I found last month, I was stuck in a situation where I had to stay in an area for about an hour or 2 hours. And I went to a park and I had my book. So I thought, I'll write. And the funny part was I didn't have a pen. Do you know how hard it is to buy a pen these days?
Yes.
It's crazy, because they're kind of going obsolete.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was one of those life moments where I went, oh boy, things have really changed. I didn't. So you're right. I mean, that's a show for another day, but I thought I would share that with you. And it was an eye opener for me, because I went, oh boy, like everybody does it on their phones now, and I'm still writing cursive in a book. What an old fart I am. All right. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Bye.